revolution, creation of jobs in line with the fourth industrial and the fifth industrial revolution. So that is a mission. So when we look at the sector, there are 4 key subsectors that will focus on and focuses on. So the first is a public sector, there is the private sector, financial institutions, as well as small businesses, SMMEs, so small, medium, and micro enterprises. And today we've got panelists who represent 2 of those sectors, so the private sector and the financial institution, the DFIs. So with the public sector, this includes governments working alongside government departments, investment departments, treasury, commerce, trade and industry departments, women and youth departments, prisons, as well as all the other, ministries such as the small, medium, and medium business ministries that are created in each country. And of course, for each country is different. So because this cannot be achieved unless we work in partnership with public sector. The second is a private sector. So private sector and investment agencies, which includes chambers of commerce, business association, listed companies and listed companies, and of course the SMEs. Then there is the financial institutions. So development banks, so DFIs, this may include DBSA, ADB. We know examples of DFIs. Banks, traditional banks, where we can get collateral financing, then private development agents and others. And of course, there is a small, medium, micro enterprises, and this will be in partnership with a global business school of entrepreneurship. And the director, Mr. Makoni, shared a few weeks back, we see us working in collaboration. So in this first year of the sector, this will be the key strategy. I'm very, very excited about is the creation and the launch of the global digital platform for enhanced ease of connectivity and businesses across the sector and all the subsectors, as well as a repository of opportunities, information, collaboration, material, and I'll touch a little bit more on the GDP. And again, we will have a more comprehensive session next week about the GDP, because this is going to change how business and all the sectors, can reach to all the 200 countries globally. So there'll also be another focus areas is enhanced collaboration across all the subsectors and improve relations between the regions, as well as improved North and South cooperation. The third is increased access to finance and information by SMMEs, leading to improved collaboration between policymakers, business leaders for enabling policy environments. And I'll touch a little bit about each of this, because as you know, if the policy is bureaucratic, creates barriers, the sector cannot thrive. So working in collaboration with policymakers, that this climate is an enabling climate, will be one of the focus areas. Then the other one is hosting signature events. GBR has traditionally hosted very successful World Congress and Investment Summits, which bring together all the key actors and stakeholders of the sector, which is a great opportunity for meeting and matching investors and businesses, as well as having conversations in the sector. So this will continue, as well as SMME annual summits. Then there'll be the launch of the Global Business Roundtable, CSR or CSI in different regions, the consultancy offering. So before I go into each of the sectors, there is now a race to connect physically and economically to the world's most important supply of raw materials. And we can now see with what happens in one part of the world has a ripple effect to the rest of the world. So the crisis that is happening in Ukraine and Russia has rippled throughout the world. And this is seen in increased oil prices, gas prices, and everything else has gone up as a result. So connecting the world physically and economically, and as well as this, the race to the raw materials, by really creating this GDP and ensuring cohesion across regions and across the globe, ensures that there is economic prosperity, shared prosperity for all. So the first focus area, which, as I said, I'm only going to touch a little bit on because next week is a full session on the global digital platform. So is this global digital platform that we are all really platform is a first of its kind globally, and it will change, absolutely revolutionize the nature and structure of economy and doing business. It will also create a repository for all other sectors. But because today I'm speaking about economy, I've really just honed in on the economy sector. So it's a digital platform. Again, digital platforms that have emerged, companies such as Amazon, Etsy, Facebook, have enabled a wide range of economic activities. So the GDP will open the way as well for radical changes in how we work, how we socialize, how we create value in the economy, as well as compete for resulting profits. And for us, how we ensure shared prosperity for all. So the platform, will enhance connectivity, continuity, and agility in the face of disruption. If COVID and the pandemic taught us anything, is that business must continue with any disruptions that come in the future, and having a platform that ensures continuity is a game changer. And the GDP will just be that. It will be a one-source spot for digital content distribution at a global scale. It will reduce the cost of doing business, such that you don't have to travel to a country to get contacts, to make connections. You can make them on a digital platform. It as well be a repository of information opportunities in all the subsectors. So as a result, it will foster agile innovation and facilitate leading to new knowledge that can give this organization an advantage. So for instance, this platform would be available on the global digital platform when it launches. So the GDP, and it will connect all the continents, it will connect all the countries, it will connect all the cities. So 5 continents, 200 countries, 2,000 cities, connecting companies, connecting communities, ensuring shared prosperity. So the second focus area is increased regional and global cooperation. So we have now learned that no region is an island. No region can survive without cooperation across all the regions. The 4 subsectors and improved relations between regions and South-North cooperation is important. And the 2 panelists, again, will reflect, how collaboration between DFIs as well as the private sector, the 2 sectors that they represent, is important. So one of the ways that GBR seeks to do this is enter into partnerships, MOUs or MOAs with chambers of commerce, business association, ministries of trade, industry and Ministry of Industry and Commerce across the globe, because again, this ensures information, the opportunities that are needed to enhance business, viable economies across all the countries. The third focus area is improved access to finance and investment for private sector as well as the SMMEs. We all know that SMMEs play a critical role in the global economy, and they're the most significant contributors to employment. And we now know that by 2030, 600 million jobs will be needed workforce, which makes SMME development a high priority for many governments and DFIs around the world. And GBR also believes that if SMMEs are equipped to ensure sustainable businesses, to ensure compliance with the regulatory policies in their countries, to ensure access to finance, this is the buffer that is needed, especially to move the developing world to the developed world, to be able to create jobs that are sustainable. But we all know that SMMEs face greater financing obstacles and enjoy less access to external finance and face higher transaction costs and higher risk premiums. And governments are taking note. And as GBR, we are partnering and we seek to partner with governments to be able to be part of this work around SMMEs. So GBR has partnered in South Africa with the Department of Small Business, which in 20 department developed an SMME support plan, and it details how the work of the departments and its entities will contribute to the medium strategic framework and the NDP, the National Development Plan 2030 objectives for the country. And this is this goes across all the countries, especially when you think about Africa, Asia, and Latin America, where governments understand that developing and equipping the SMME sector, is the only way for economies to be thriving. So improved access to finance and investment. So in partnership with the Global Business School of Entrepreneurship, we will provide training and capacity building to ensure sustainability of the SMME sector. So this will provide and equip the sector with support, training, understanding regulatory laws, as well as navigating infrastructure and the needs that this business needs to thrive, to ensure that entrepreneurs thrive. There is increased access to finance and information. So this is one of the things that this will do. Will ensure increased access to finance and information by DFIs and financial institutions to private sector and SMME. One of the panelists tonight is from a DFI, and she'll speak a little bit to that. This will also harness sustainable growth for SMMEs to ensure that they are sustainable and profitable beyond the 5-year mark. As we all know, very enthusiastically. However, lots of these businesses do not survive beyond the 3rd to the 5th year. So ensuring that we scale them up, we incubate, we provide continued support will ensure sustainability for the sector. And then there will be increased job creation by SMMEs, especially targeting women and the youth, as well as another focus area will be promoting dialogue for sustainable economic development. So this cannot be done. This cannot happen in isolation. It must happen in dialogue with policymakers, with governments. So mobilizing, engaging all the stakeholders, government, private sector, AU, SADC, ECOWAS, and all the regional bodies is of and sharing best practices where we can exchange, inspire change at a global level. And this again will be possible because of the GDP. So improved policies for economic growth. So when policies create an enabling environment, we remove barriers to doing business. We promote business collaboration, simplify government bureaucracy, as well as making markets work for sustainable development. And this will be achieved through collaboration and dialogue between policymakers, businesses, and all the actors of the subsect of the sector, all the 4 subsectors. So another focus area, one of the other focus areas, is the launch of the GBR. In most countries, in many of the countries globally now, a lot of companies are required by law to ensure to have CSR or CSI investment. And for most companies, many of them do this as a tick the box. And we see ourselves as providing this much needed consultancy offering because it will target public, private, as well as the SMME sector by presenting the organization values as well as governance models. So helping organizations understand how engaging in CSR consultancy is in their best interest, and again, gives back social investment, return on social investment. So this offering will also demonstrate the linkages between the business's core strategy as well as the commitment to sustainable economies. This unique offering will also propel organizations to set goals, leading to greater financial, social return on investment. And why do we think that we are in a great place to offer this? So as a GBR team, there is great diversity as well as experiences in the team in all the 8 sectors, working with multiple stakeholders, and we are spread out. The team has got an in-depth understanding of communities and supporting organizations at grassroots levels. So CSR in Africa will look very different from CSR in the UK, which will look very different from CSR in the US, because there is an understanding of organizations as well as the needs of the clients at grassroots level. Is sensitive to the social economic environment that surrounds the business. So in the end, this we can propose to an organization that they don't have to have this in-house, but they can outsource it, ensuring greater impact not just on the organization, but the society, which leads to shared prosperity. So, this is what we see the CSR consultancy offering. So it will work with companies to ensure compliance, develop holistic CSR strategy that are sustainable. We will design and implement strategic partnerships with the partners. We'll develop advocacy and communication plans, provide funding models, as well as construct tax efficient mechanisms, because a lot of companies will get tax breaks as a result of this, as well as implement and measure progress. So measurement and of impact and of progress, it would also be one of the big take. Why must we all be invested in ensuring economic transformation for shared prosperity? It is because now as a globe, we are more interconnected now than ever before. Anything that happens in one corner of the world impacts and affects all of us. So, and as GBR, we believe that solving the world's most challenging society problems requires new ways of thinking, acting, and partnering. And our approach aims to meet business objectives that create a competitive advantage for corporations through innovations that address society needs, as we are guided by our faith and the biblical principles that there is abundance. And abundance means more than enough. There is more than enough for all the people in the world for a shared prosperity. And so those are some of the focus areas this year. And I look forward to engaging with most of you as we keep growing and developing the sector's strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for a wonderful presentation. You touched on quite a lot of stuff. You have a mammoth task in this sector of business, economy, and finance, to reach out to governments, to reach out to private sector, public sector, financial institutions, as well as small businesses. You started by defining an economy as a system of production, distribution, and consumption. You cited or you showed how the word of God talks about wealth, that God is he who gives you power to get wealth. You showed how our work works in tandem with the United Nations SDGs, specifically citing goals 7 to 11. You went on to talk about economic development, which entails coming up with policy, strategy, and supporting actions set by governments and communities. You went on to say GBR encourage negotiation of new social contracts, and GBR enforces economic empowerment, which is at the heart of the sector of business, economy, and finance. The sector has 4 subsectors: the public sector, private sector, financial institutions, and small and medium enterprises sector. You touched on the importance of the global digital platform, which we are working on as GBR, which will be a game changer in terms of reaching businesses across the globe, reaching 5 continents, 200 countries, through 30 regions. Definitely, this is a game changer, and it will change how businesses transact. You touched on the race to connect the world physically and economically for the supply of raw materials. It is important to increase regional and global communication cooperation through entering into memorandums of understanding with relevant stakeholders, which your sector is working on. You also touched on the facilitation of improved access to finance and investment for private sector and small and medium enterprise. You also spoke about the link between Dr. Jimmy Makon's Global Business School of Entrepreneurship and your sector, how the 2 sectors of GBR will work together to reach out to communities and impact businesses and entrepreneurs, that is women and youth. Then you also touched on the CSR consultancy as a key factor of the sector. You touched on a number of things. Because of time, let me introduce our second panelist, who is Mr. Matt Parfitt from United Kingdom. Matt is a founder and CEO of Grace Enterprises, transforming lives through supported employment in their sustainable businesses. The first Grace Enterprises business is Radiant Cleaners, a Mount award-winning social enterprise cleaning company. The second business is Jubilee Events, which provides top quality marquee and equipment hire for corporate events, wedding receptions, large garden parties, focused on excellency, employment, and ethics. Both businesses employ people with major barriers to work, for example, homelessness, survivors of modern slavery, ex-offenders, addiction issues, etc., and pay everyone the real living wage. Optional mentoring and coaching means that Grace Enterprises is able to provide holistic support to see lives transformed. Your Excellency, Mr. Parfitt, your 15 minutes starts now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gandawa, and thank you for the invitation to be here. Thank you, Carole, as well. I'm glad I don't have your job of talking about the entire economy and the economic system, but I'm going to just talk about what we are doing here in the UK as an example, as Carole said, of an SME and how we are endeavoring to make it work and how we see this as a God-given thing, God-called thing, and yeah, really seeing God's favor on it. So just to give you an insight on how this is working. So yeah, from the bio, you'll have just heard that we are in the UK, and you can see on the screen there in Nottingham in the United Kingdom. So most famous for Robin Hood, but we were started in 2007 by this church, which is Grace Church in Nottingham. But my story would go all the way back before that, just to give you a bit of a prelude to that, of actually really feeling the call of God, which started when we were visiting Kenya back in 2006, and seeing there a church that was running businesses, really inspirational. And I think that sort of really lit a touch paper in me, like got something started, and felt the call of God later. So I gave up my career as a primary school teacher to start a gardening business, did that for 10 years before then getting the church to, church said yes, and we now do it as a church. So the church started this off, and I'll touch on that in a minute, but the whole aim, and the next slide will sort of set out what we try and do and our model really. So lots of the things that have already been talked about, we see as really important. But for us, if I just talk it around from the opportunity, the red one in the top right corner, then what we do is we create jobs for people who face major barriers to work. So homelessness, people with a criminal record, addiction, physical and mental health issues. And we do that by creating jobs in our sustainable and growing businesses, providing high quality services, and we pay everyone, as was just said, the real living wage, which in our country, there's a minimum wage, the legal minimum, but there's another number, sort of the real living wage, what you need to actually be able to live sustainably. And we pay that in an industry that is not common. But we would say that a Grace Enterprises job is more than just a job. So also then the yellow bit, which would be that we support people. So we do that through holistic support, through regular reviews, signposting, and optional mentoring and coaching for all of our employees, whether they're Christians or not. And as well as seeing people thrive, the green bit, we measure our impact, which is really important. I think back to the things Carole was talking about, the CSR offerings, then being able to prove you're doing something is really important. So we've got all the stats to show that show how lives are being changed, and how the social value, which is definitely key here, social value is being created. And then moving around to the blue bit, because it works, people seem to notice. So we're a pioneering organization. We're playing an active role in changing sort of the systemic issues in Nottingham and beyond. And I don't think I realized this would be what half my job is involved in, sort of influencing others and trying to show there is a better way and talk to others about it. And then lastly, we don't want to do it on our own. So we think that we will make a more significant impact and a more sustainable impact in society by working with other individuals and with organizations with similar values to us. So all those things are sort of part of our model, our DNA. And then, and to what we're doing so far, we've got a vision for 7 businesses, but so far have got 2. The next slide just sets out that. So you've got so the Grace Church is there. So Grace Church started it, but no legal link, hence the dotted line, the dashed line. So Grace Enterprises, the G, is a separate legal entity, and that sort of is the overarching umbrella organization. And then as you've already heard, 2 businesses, one being Radiant Cleaners, which is, as you'll have guessed, a cleaning company and employing all those people I talked about. The second one that's only just started being Jubilee Events, which is going to be a marquee corporate event, that type of company. And when we're believing God for more businesses, all run on the same ethos in a different area, running different business, but actually treating people well, employing the people that Jesus talks about, being the least, the last, and the lonely, loving them, saying that they are worthy, that they are valuable, and treating them that way in the way that we employ them. The next slide just shows a bit of what we have done in terms of this is where with just Radiant Cleaners, the impact so far. So we are small. So current team, as you can see in the middle, of about 32 employees, which is overall the last 4.5 years we've employed 65. So you can see there that so the current team is about half, and half the people have moved on, and we love that. So we are a stepping stone for some, we give opportunities where others would not, and then people move on to other jobs, as you can see on the slide on the right, a whole range of other jobs, which is exciting. But also some people stay with us, and that's great as well. So they working more hours, getting more responsibility, and that's absolutely fine. We celebrate people moving on, and we celebrate people staying. And the slide I should have said on the left, you can see there the kind of people that we're employing. So numbers there: 19% homelessness, 18% English as second language, 22% drugs and alcohol, well, 22% drugs rather, 14% alcohol issues, 14% learning difficulties, 19% of people in trouble with the police. So that's the people who are coming in. And then on the right, you can see people going out, like the kind of jobs they're moving on to. And yeah, there's a quote on that one as well about how the jobs gives purpose and hope, and people being uplifted through employment. It's very rarely about the money, we find. And the next slide talks about how this is the holistic bit. So we've called it the Living Life Index, which comes from like John 10 verse 10, where Jesus is promising life and life to the full. I think when we started our businesses, it was for me, it was a real frustration. We were giving out food parcels as a church, which clearly is what people need when they are hungry, but actually that's not sustainable. And we wanted to actually sit, and it's not living life to the full, but actually wanting to be able to be part of a practical, sustainable solution. So that's why we started the businesses, to employ people. Clearly it's going to be better than a food parcel, but it's not just about the money. So my wife Sam was a GP, a doctor, and now she heads up our employee support. So she has regular reviews with people, and she will look at them, all these characteristics, and you can see there that purpose, hope, self-esteem, autonomy, these are not all to do with work. It's only the workplace skills and maybe the transferable skills. The other things really are the areas we want to see people's lives changed in, but actually, and it's that holistic thing. We care about the whole person. The job is just a vehicle to be able to build relationships and to see life changed. And we all know that to see true transformation needs the Holy Spirit, needs Jesus. But in a work context, we measure all these things, and we look at people's housing, finances, relationships. And these are the areas, I think, as the next slide will show, where we see most change. Actually, you might think it's going to be a finance thing, and people will say, thank you for giving me more money. But actually, in reality, the things we see go up the most are self-esteem and hope and purpose, where there's a huge change in how people feel about themselves and how people feel about life. So a job makes a difference. It does improve people's finances. It does probably mean they end up in better housing as well. But we see relationships rebuilt and improved as people are given hope and dignity through work. As you can see in that quote, this has given me purpose in my life. And this was someone who was late 50s, hadn't worked for years, not a Christian, and then is really puzzled. Why would a church start a business? And then if they did that, why would they give a job to me? Because I don't go to that church. I don't necessarily believe anything, but that's what we feel like Jesus has called us to do. Practically be his hands and feet, loving people. And then she came to our Carole service before Christmas. She's engaging with church, and she wouldn't be doing that otherwise. And it'd be fascinating to see what happens with her in the next few years. The next slide is from, it's me and our operations manager in December. So we won a national award, and this is not a Christian award. There's no one saying, well done, you're running a faith-based business, but you might be able to see in the background, there are some big name companies there. So some really big corporate players who are recognizing us for the social value created, the jobs created. And we work with these companies on a business level. So we are not a sympathy vote where, oh, you're doing something nice, let's try and give you some money. We are selling a business service to a business that needs cleaning. And then for them, it's like, well, we're gonna get someone to do this cleaning. Why would it not be you if you can deliver? And that's why I think delivery is absolutely key. The 3 E's that were mentioned, excellence is number 1, which creates the employment. And then we choose to do it ethically. But without the excellence, there is no business. There will be no one employed. It won't be sustainable. It will just fall flat. But if we can do our business well as Christians, we can be the best. So we can run our businesses with trust and honesty and integrity. do the job really well, charge a fair price, make a reasonable profit. As Carole was saying, there's nothing wrong with making money and a profit. The question is what you do with it. It's not falling in love with money, but actually being able to say, we make a profit, we reinvest it for good, and actually that being a good thing, and the church believing that. So it's very exciting to see lives changed. An example, just quickly to finish, would be someone who is 53, and he's been struggled with addiction issues since he was 10. So 43 years he struggled, addicted to one thing or another. But he's become a Christian, not through us, before he came along, but then he's been at our church, he's volunteering, and then we've taken him on and giving him an opportunity. And his life's not perfect. He's still living in temporary accommodation. And that's something that we would love to see change next. But it feels like we're part of a story where it's Jesus that does the main work. He does the changing, but we can be the practical bit around that to help mentor, help support, and help see someone come through what we hope to be life to the full, that we can play our part as Jesus goes ahead of us and really changes hearts. And yeah, the last slide is just saying that that's what we feel like we're called to do. I feel I could happily answer any Q&A questions about it, but I feel like God gave me a really clear vision to what we're going to do. And it's exciting to see what looks impossible. We're going to pioneer something. We're going to do it in Nottingham. We go beyond there to the UK and then see where's next. So if you don't get to ask the question in the Q&A, find me on LinkedIn, send me an email. Love to chat more. But that's part of our story. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Matt, for this wonderful presentation. It was brief, but full of content. I like the way you put it. You know, you say you create jobs for people. You support people. You measure the impact, and you work with others in cooperation to make sure that you have impact to the people and communities that you serve. The interlink of the Christian values, Christian-based organization, and the work that you do is very good. It actually works the same way we do in GBR. We believe in godly values, and we are guided by godly values, and we do things that Jesus would do if he was here with us. You are really doing a fantastic work there. It might sound, when you say you have 32 employees, you're a small organization, you few, I would say no. 32 is not a small number. There are so many people. It's a chain, you know, it's a chain that goes, you touch one, they touch 3 or 4 people, the 32 of them. So it's a very big number. You need to continue to work in like that. The principle of running a business with integrity is very crucial that you mentioned. You speak about the Living Life Index, whether you're dealing with mental health and self-esteem, which is a very important aspect in life, and drugs and alcohol, and a various number of issues there that you put in the Living Life Index. I like the aspect that, you know, the job, you offer the jobs as a vehicle, you know, to reach the people and impact communities. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for this wonderful presentation. Hopefully, we will get questions from our the guests and the viewers at the end. But let me introduce my next panelist, who is Excellency Diana Njuguna from South Africa. Diana is an Africa investment advisor to the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, responsible for Southern Africa. She is a senior investment professional with over a decade of experience in private equity, mezzanine debt, and asset management. She is passionate about investments in sub-Saharan Africa and has a deep knowledge of equity and debt instruments. Diana has been involved in all aspects of the investment process, including deal origination, assessment, structuring, execution, post-transaction monitoring, exits, as well as fundraising. She is 2010 Rhodes Scholar with an MBA and MSc in African Studies from the University of Oxford and an MSc in Accounting and Finance from Birmingham City University. She is also a CFA, a charter holder, and an ARCA fellow. Your Excellency, your 15 minutes starts now.
Thank you very much. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Proceed, ma'am.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. I was invited to come and speak to you from the perspective of a developmental financial institution. I am currently an Africa investment advisor to the US International Development Finance Corporation, in short, the DFC. And the DFC's mandate is to support the private sector. I'm not sure if the presentation is up yet or not.
It's not yet on, Your Excellency.
Okay. Okay, well, it's coming up. I was just saying that the DFC is America's development.
There it is, yes.
You can move to the next slide. We are America's Development Bank, and our mandate is to support the private sector. Prior to 2020, DFC used to be referred to as OPIC. However, with the conversion from OPIC to DFC, we had a number of changes. The first one is we now no longer have a requirement for there to be any form of US nexus or US shareholding or US involvement for us to provide any support to a particular opportunity. It is now more of a preference than a requirement. Then secondly, we now as DFC have doubled the capacity that OPIC had. OPIC had about $30 billion to invest, and now the DFC has about $60 billion that we want to invest, and of that, $8 billion has been earmarked for Africa. And that will bring me to the next slide, where I will show you where DFC works. We have investments globally. Currently in Africa, that slide says we have about $8 billion worth of investments, but as of today, our active commitments in Africa amount to about $9 billion. And we have investments across Sub-Saharan Africa. As I mentioned earlier, I am responsible for Southern Africa, but apart from myself, we do have someone who is based in Nairobi covering East Africa, someone in Addis covering Horn of Africa, someone in Lagos covering Anglophone West Africa, someone in Dakar covering Francophone West and Central Africa, and someone else in Johannesburg covering Lusophone Africa. So Angola and Mozambique would fall under him, and I would cover the rest, which includes South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Eswatini, Lesotho, Comoros, and Mauritius. And we are looking to deploy about $8 billion over the next 3 to 5 years on the continent. So that's a second change. We have doubled the capacity. The third change is we now have the opportunity to invest additional products, which takes me to the next slide. I'll start by walking you through our 3 legacy products and then what the new products are. Our first and most popular product is debt. We can offer all types of debt, ranging from senior debt to mezzanine debt, stretch senior. Our ticket sizes in theory can be as little as $1 million. However, in practice, we tend to prefer at least $5 million if possible. And we can provide up to $1 billion in terms of debt per transaction. In terms of our tenors, we can provide funding ranging from 3 years all the way to 20 to 25 years. The second product that we offer that is also a legacy product is investment guarantees. We have 2 types of investment guarantees. The first one is what we refer to as a partial loan portfolio guarantee, which we normally offer to banks, where we can agree with a bank that, for example, they can provide loans amounting to, say, up to $20 million to SMEs in the agribusiness space, say, in Zambia. And to the extent any of those SMEs default on their loan, we would share the loss in the principal 50-50 with the bank. So if they're providing loans of up to $20 million, we will provide a guarantee to cover up to $10 million in case any of those SMEs default. And the idea behind that is to incentivize the banks to lend to SMEs, which they wouldn't have had the appetite to invest in or provide loans to without our guarantee product. The second guarantee product that we offer is what we refer to as an unfunded bank guarantee. And we normally utilize this when we have a client that is not able to take on USD financing. At the moment, the DFC is only able to deploy USD financing, but sometimes you'll find a client who says they're not keen or able to take on USD. So what we would do is we would partner with one of the Tier 1 local banks, give them a USD guarantee, and they, on the back of that guarantee, would issue a local currency loan to the client. And this will basically facilitate a transaction where maybe the bank did not have the capacity to provide the loan to the client, but because of our guarantee, they're willing to do that. And the bank will not be taking on any project-specific risk. We are the ones who will be taking on that risk. They, on the other hand, will be taking on US government agency risk, such that if the client defaults, then we would be able to cover whatever loss would be incurred. That's our second product in terms of investment guarantees. The third product that we offer is political risk insurance, where we can insure against things like currency convertibility, terrorism, expropriation, breach of contract, and so on and so forth, similar to what MIGA from World Bank would offer. And again, similar to our debt product and our investment guarantee product, we can offer political risk insurance coverage ranging from $5 million to $1 billion, and tenors ranging from 3 years all the way to 25 years. Then recently, with the conversion from OPIC to DFC in 2020, we introduced 2 new products. The first one is equity. And in equity, we can offer equity directly into businesses or offer equity to private equity and private credit funds. For direct equity, we can invest between $10 and $20 million, so long as DFC stake is not more than 30%. For private equity and private credit funds, we can also invest between $10 and $40 million, so long as DFC's commitment of the overall commitment is not more than 30%. And then lastly, we offer technical assistance financing, where we can fund things like technical feasibility studies or technical trainings. However, we normally offer this to DFC's already existing clients or clients who we know for sure we will provide longer-term tenor financing to. And the way this works is we share the cost 50-50 with the client. And once the client draws on the longer-term tenor financing, or once they're able to raise longer-term tenor financing post the feasibility study, they have to reimburse DFC the portion that DFC had invested in. And normally we provide coverage or feasibility study funding or technical assistance funding ranging from $100,000 to about $4 million. So those are our products. Next, I'll talk you through some of our critical sectors. We have about, I would say, 6 priority sectors that we would like to focus on. The first one is what I would refer to as climate or clean energy. At the moment, we're focusing more on renewable energy. Examples include wind and solar. We can also look at hydro, so long as it's run of the river as opposed to being dam run, mainly because the environmental impact assessment implications for a dam tend to be much higher than if it's run of the river. And also the displacement issues can sometimes be a challenge. So we tend to prefer run of the river with hydro projects or wind or solar projects. And at climate, we can also look at plastic recycling. For instance, last year, we provided financing to a company called Avada Recycling that was looking to set up a plastic recycling plant here in South Africa. The second sector that we are keen to support is healthcare. This could include support of vaccine manufacturing or provision of healthcare services, not just to private patients, but also public patients. As an example, last year, we as a DFC, together with a number of DFIs, provided funding to Aspen Pharmacare to assist them with their vaccine manufacturing efforts of the J&J vaccine. They're doing fill and finish here in South Africa. Recently, about 2 weeks ago, we also announced that we'll be providing support as a DFI consortium to BioVac that currently does fill and finish of childhood immunization vaccines for the likes of Pfizer and Sanofi, that is looking to set up a multi-vaccine plant. They recently got awarded a contract by Pfizer to do fill and finish of the Pfizer vaccine in South Africa for Africa, and they want to now build a bigger plant that will allow them to work on additional vaccines. And we are providing funding for the bankable feasibility study and potentially debt financing to assist them with that vaccine plant. Then the third sector that we are keen to support is critical infrastructure. This can include things like roads, ports, and bridges on a PPP basis. The fourth sector is ICT. So anything to do with data centers, 5G, fiber, or last mile connection is of great interest. Last year, we also provided funding to Africa data centers to help them with their data center efforts in Kenya, Nigeria, as well as South Africa. In addition to that, I would say the fifth sector that we're keen to support is financial inclusion. This includes providing either debt or provision of guarantees to financial institutions, which can then on lend to SMEs as well as women-owned businesses. Having said that, we can look at deals across other sectors as well, so long as they're not the typical DFI scene industries like your firearms, ammunition, gambling, hard liquor, or tobacco. And as I said, DFC's mandate is to support private sector. So to the extent any of you come across any opportunities that may require either debt, equity, investment guarantees, or political risk insurance coverage in any of the markets that I mentioned within Sub-Saharan Africa, we'll be happy to engage and see how we can provide support to such opportunities. Typically, we like to finance expansion or growth, so we would fund already existing businesses that have a track record of at least 2 to 3 years and generating, I would say, revenue of at least $1 million. However, we can look at project finance transactions so long as the sponsors or the technical partners they're partnering with can demonstrate they have a track record doing something similar. In addition, we like to finance, like I said, being a development financial institution, we like to finance expansion or growth. So typically we would not finance things like refinancings or acquisition of shares or replacement capital, because that's viewed as exchanging of money from one hand to the other, as opposed to it being developmental. And also being a DFI, we like to be additional. And what I mean by that is our role is not to crowd out the private credit market. We are here to fill in a funding gap. So to the extent a client can demonstrate that they have spoken to the banks or the private market before coming to us, and they're approaching us to fill in a funding gap, we view that a lot more favorably than them approaching us just because we happen to be cheaper. And so we would typically not finance 100% of the total funding requirements. When it comes to debt, we could consider financing up to 50%. And when it comes to equity, we finance up to 30%, mainly because we prefer to generate a shareholder. And then lastly, being a DFI, we also have developmental aspects that we look at in transactions. And we can look at things like, is there any form of women empowerment in terms of either the overall shareholding or senior leadership or overall workforce. We also look to see whether there is anything related to creation of jobs or how the opportunity results in the improvement of the livelihoods of the lower income groups, or whether there's any form of innovation. So we are looking to deploy that $8 billion. And to the extent you have any opportunities, once again, feel free to reach out to me. I believe Carole and the team will be in a position to share my contact details so that if anybody wants to reach out, they can easily do that. Thank you very much. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have or clarify anything that was not clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for giving us an insight into the work that you do at DFC, which is a very instrumental institution in terms of finance. You touch on a number of solutions, the products that you offer, direct loans up to 1 billion, loan guarantees, which is investment guarantees, political risk insurance of up to 1 billion, equity financing, that's direct equity of approximate at least 30%, if I got it right, 30% equity financing. And you also offer technical development, that's feasibility studies to the tune of 100,000 upwards. You mentioned that you have 8 billion that you need to put into the continent within 3 to 5 years. So the continent has that opportunity of accessing 8 billion. But we have 29.9 billion active commitments across the world as a DFC. You mentioned your investment priorities as energy, that is wind and solar, the healthcare, critical infrastructure, that's the roads, the ports, bridges, etc. Technology, you mentioned connecting emerging markets, which our GDP falls under there. You talk of 5G, then financing for small businesses and women entrepreneurs, which basically is financial inclusion. You said you are more into, you finance for expansion and growth, and you come in to fill in the funding gaps in the market. And normally in terms of debt, you finance up to 50%. You don't finance 100%, but you finance up to 50%. Thank you so much for this insight, which is very critical in the work that we do. Actually, you realize that all our sectors, the 8 sectors of GBR, will benefit from the work that you do. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for this wonderful presentation. I would then move on to open to the session to our guests, those that have questions to ask to our panelists. The floor is open. I don't see. Yes, Madam Molly, you can proceed.
Thank you very much, Dr. Godfrey, and thank you very much to the panelists, our esteemed panelists, for the presentations that have been made. I have one question directed to Ms. Carole Wanjau. And my question is related to the regional integration and partnerships. And I agree with you that the world is interrelated, it's interconnected, there's interdependence, and with the recent developments globally, we can see that if one country sneezes, the whole world can sneeze, especially if they have strategic resources that we depend on. And therefore my question is it possible for us to also consider the risk management element of being cautious in the regional integration processes and partnerships, such that there's self-reliance in our approach as GBR, so as to ensure security in times of a calamity like we see at this point in time. Yeah, so that's my question, Chairperson, because the worry is I'm thinking of Egypt, of Joseph at the time of the famine, and how he kept, how he kept everything, the food, the storage, and the world had to come to Egypt when he was Prime Minister. So can we look into that as GBR, so that such that when there's calamity, the world can come to us, and instead of us being worried about being integrated to the world, such that when there are problems, we will also find ourselves inheriting those problems, whether we are the authors of those problems or not. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, Carole?
A few questions, Dr. Gandawa, and then we answer them 3 or 5 at the same time.
Oh, okay, no problem. So, Your Excellency Tokumbo, you may proceed to ask your question or give your intervention.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gandawa. And thank you for the excellent presentations of today. So really elucidating in a lot of areas. First of all, my two questions are NGO related, that is non-governmental organization. In the first presentation, by our sister, Ms. Nicole Wanjau, she spoke extensively and it's so appreciated. My question to her is in-depth understanding of communities and supporting organizations at grassroots level. Is there a provision given to NGOs to act as pressure groups in getting things done at the grassroots level? We all know that NGOs are closer to the people living in the grassroots, in the rural communities. I just want to know if there are provisions to actually empower NGOs to play a role there. Because you know, in the implementation of the Millennium Development Goals, even the then UN Secretary General actually said that the failures associated with the implementation of the Millennium Development Goals before the successor arrangement is the exclusion of NGOs. So I just want to know whether this time we are carrying NGOs along. And the second question goes to Madam Diana Njuguna. That's also NGO related. I'm seeing here that the major portion, a good deal of what the DFC does is to allocate funds to assist the private sector to address challenges of developing countries. I want to know if the NGOs are considered as part of the private sector that can benefit, that really can benefit from the funding of the DFC. And if there is a support that can go to NGOs, I think that will also go a long way in actually clearing up some of the development problems in developing countries, particularly as they relate to women. I'm really speaking in terms of trafficking in persons. There are NGOs that address that. Is there a way they can benefit from the assistance of the DFC? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency Tokumbo, for those two important questions. Do we have anyone with a question or an intervention before our panelists could respond to the questions? Thank you. I don't see a hand there. So, Madam Wanjau, you can respond. Then,
yes.
Your Excellency Diana will come in after you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Madam Dlamini, for your question. And it is prudent while we seek integration without taking into account hedging and risk, could end up being harmful. So one of the ways in which we see the global digital platform is bringing together countries where doing business has been difficult and has been burdensome. So, and in the economic integration, the regional and global integration that I speak about, it's, for instance, free trade, ease of movement of goods across regions. As you well know, even for travel, for instance, in Africa, just the sheer energy that is required just to move across from one country to the others and the cost, it's just very prohibitive. Now, doing business across these regions, for somebody who has a business, for instance, in Lesotho, and you want to do business in Kenya, the cost just becomes such a barrier because of the prohibitive nature of policies and the borders. So in terms of economic integration, regional and global, so it's working with policymakers on free trade tariffs, common markets, working, especially when I think about Africa, when you think about ECOWAS, SADC, EAC, how are those bodies, regional bodies, working in collaboration with GBR, with the GDP to ensure ease of doing business, establishing business, and ensuring that this business, are sustainable. But it's also the political union. There has been lots of talk about the AU passport to ensure ease of people and goods, but the more powerful countries, have resisted, to that. We can see what has also happened in ensuring that we remove all these barriers that exist. I want to give you an example. For instance, many markets, insurance, transportation, banking services have really grown as a result of economic integration, because now people have got access to more choices, international brands, because of free trade and policies within countries. So if you're in South Africa, you can belong to a healthcare provider, one that is based in the US, and they can cover you for your medical care, and this is as a result of technology and the global digital for integration. We should also be prudent about hedging ourselves against risk and not opening ourselves, because if it all collapses, we don't want the collapse. We have integrated without bearing in mind the risks. And Madam Tokunbo, thank you for your question about NGOs. So again, in my previous life, I used to work in the development space. And as you say clearly, NGOs are connected to the heartbeat that happens at the community. And, for instance, when I think about the CSR offering, proposing to launch, there is a big component of impact measurement, advocacy, which will really be driven by communities on the ground, because it's not about people at the top saying this is what is needed, but what citizens and societies and communities at the ground feel is needed. So this will be in conjunction with, for instance, the faith and society sector, faith, family and society sector. There is also the arts culture in the heartbeat of communities at the very grassroots level. So, thank you for reminding us that, while you don't see NGOs called out, when I think about call for change and advocacy, NGOs are a critical stakeholder. Thank you very much. I'll let Ms. Diana answer the other question, but I can see she has typed something.
Yes, I do agree with you that NGOs play a very critical role. And in answering your question as to whether DFC will be in a position to support NGOs, I have shared a link that shares DFC's eligibility requirements. So there's some things we normally look for in a company before we can provide financing to them. And some of the questions would be, is the opportunity in a country where DFC is looking to work in? And DFC's mandate is to support opportunities in lower income and lower middle income countries. Having said that, a market like South Africa is considered to be upper middle income. And for us to support an opportunity like that, it would have to be highly developmental and in 4 sectors: healthcare for the masses, climate angle, critical infrastructure, and financial inclusion, and also ICT. Second thing we'd look at, is the entity looking for financing from us, looking for funding ranging from between 3 to 10 years or 15 years, then we can have a discussion with them. If they're looking for funding for a shorter period of time, below 3 years, then they would not meet eligibility requirements. Third thing we look at is the entity able to absorb between $1 million up to $1 billion. If they're seeking anything less than $1 million, to be very difficult for us provide the support to them. We instead would prefer to provide the funding to a financial institution or a bank that would then be in a position to on lend so smaller amounts to other entities. And even though I say we can do at least $1 million, practically speaking, it takes the same amount of effort to close a $1 million versus $5 million deal. So our teams tend to prefer at least $5 million if possible. That thing we normally look at is whether the sponsor is also able to inject sufficient equity to the project. As I mentioned earlier, we normally do not finance 100% of the funding requirements. We normally finance up to 50%, which means the balance of 50% would need to be secured by the sponsor or raised or in advanced discussions before we can engage. The other thing we look at is whether they have a track record, whether it's in the business, or has the business been operational for at least 2 to 3 years, or if it's say a new or greenfield hotel, are they partnering with a sponsor that has track record doing something similar? So that track record is very important for us. Then we also have a list of investment policies that we look at in terms of how the opportunity respects the environment, workers' rights, human rights, and so on and so forth. And the links that I shared will outline what the various investment policies are. And then lastly, as I mentioned, we want to be additional. So we would want to find out whether whoever is approaching us has sought financing from the private sector lenders before coming to us first, because like I said, we want to fill in a funding gap as opposed to carrying out the private credit market. And for me, when I look at the definition of an NGO, it's normally non-profit making. And for us, when we find an opportunity, it may not necessarily be making a profit, but at least we would want to see visibility of profit within a year or a shorter period of time. And the rationale behind that is because we're providing debt, the entity needs to be able to generate sufficient cash flows to be able to repay us. And normally when we provide funding such as debt, we never provide a moratorium or an interest holiday. The interest has to be serviced every quarter. We will be able to provide a holiday on the principal, but that's just for only 2 years. And it means the balance of the tenor of the loan or whatever it is would have to be paid over the tenor of our funding. So in short, what I'm trying to say is whoever we approach, yes, has to be in the private sector, but they have to be in a position to service whatever financing we're providing, because we don't provide grants. We do have other US agencies that provide grants. For instance, we have USTDA that would fund things like tech. I would say they provide grants for things like feasibility studies. We have the likes of USAID that also provides support to entities that may require some funding. But we as a DFC normally get involved once a project or once an opportunity is in the bankable or commercial phase in terms of being able to generate revenue of at least $1 million or being profit making. I hope that answers the question in terms of what we can or cannot support.
Fantastic. You gave quite a lot of information there, Your Excellency Diana, which I think is very helpful to our guests here. I will give Excellency Matt just 1 minute if you have your parting shots, if you have anything that you need to say to our viewers.
Hi. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, thank you for your encouraging words earlier. I think that we have seen, yeah, it's a small number in some ways, but it is also a life-changing number in others. And one example would be someone we employed who was 52 at the time, and he had been unemployed since leaving school at 17. So he'd been unemployed for 35 years, and he'd been in trouble with the police. He'd had addiction issues. He'd been homeless, and no qualifications. So he worked for us. And what I think was most encouraging about that was not actually employing him, but then his son came and knocked on my door 6 weeks later, asking maybe he could have a job. And that's someone that had also left school at 15 with no qualifications, and he'd never seen anyone in his family work before. So this was not a normal thing to see employment, but actually he'd seen the change in his dad, the positive change. And now his aspirations were raised. He wanted to work. He wanted to earn some money. And he's someone that we still employ today, 3.5 years later. So to see a family where no one has ever worked, see that generational unemployment broken, see those chains start to break, see families start to be changed, is how we believe that communities will start to be changed. And then ultimately how cities and nations will be changed by these ones and twos becoming larger numbers and giving people the chance to work and to prove themselves and to support them well to do that. And yeah, that's sort of an exciting example of some chains being broken. Other ones would be about employing survivors of modern slavery in this country. And that's been incredible too. So I think whether it's the big development agencies, the NGOs changing nations, or the small individual companies, if we can get both working together and both doing their bit, then maybe we can see whichever continent we're on changing positively as God gets involved in employment and business.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Yes, Your Excellency Diana, do you have a parting shot, just 1 minute or less, if you have?
Yes, my parting shot is we are keen to support private sector to the extent you have any opportunity that may require some expansion financing. Feel free to reach out. I will put my email address in the message, and if you don't get it, feel free to reach out to Carole and team. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Most appreciated. Your Excellency Wanjau, your parting shot, if you have anything that you need to say before we proceed with our program.
Thank you. So again, I'd really like to thank the panelists who attended this session, just to show how when we talk about prosperity in the economy, finance, and business sector, what that translates to in each of the continents. I have to really thank Mr. Matt, who has been working with us together with the regional director in the UK to really think about what the CSI offering in the UK would look like. And it has been very helpful just to think about how we think about CSR here is quite different from the UK. With him being in business, it has been very eye-opening as we shape what the CSR offering across the world and the different permutations it will take. So again, for me, what I'm really excited about doing this work and about why GBR is very passionate about empowering communities, countries, societies economically is because if we empower communities economically, they're able to take charge of all the areas of their life. So as Mr. Matt called it, the living life index. So it's not just about jobs. It's about everything, all the sectors that we're working towards. And this is also how we lead people to Christ. Mr. Matt shared how how that has worked. So I'm very, very excited, and thank you very much as we shape the strategy and reach out in various regions and countries. We will look to all our GBR members to ensure that the strategy is not a one-size-fits-all, but it's a strategy that speaks to the context and the content. The content is very applicable to the communities and your region. So it is not a one-size-fits-all, so that we ensure there is a shared prosperity across all countries. And, to Ms. Diana, we're going to be reaching out to you. We had a conversation, and, the investment team, we will be speaking with them about possible opportunities. So thank you very much for attending this session. And for further questions, you can reach out to us and we will clarify. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. We move forward. I will ask Excellency Master Christian Gondo-Jude from Gabon to take our offering. Your Excellency.
Bien, Seigneur, merci pour toutes ces personnes qui vont apporter. Nous bénissons leurs mains, nous bénissons leurs œuvres et nous prions qu'elles servent à l'avancement de ton œuvre au sein de GBR.
Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for the offering. We move on to announcements and vote of thanks, where our Excellency, Mr. Tato Mashao from South Africa, will give us announcement and vote of thanks.
Greetings, Dr. Gandao, can you hear me? Sorry,
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you so much. Greetings to you and greetings to everybody that has attended this session today. I'm going to be reading the announcements and doing the vote of thanks. So the announcements are as follows. The next GBR International session will be held on Thursday, the 31st of March, 2022 from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. CAT on Zoom. Please be advised that you can watch all the previous GBR International online sessions on the GBR website, www.globalbusinessroundtable.com, and on YouTube. You are all invited to register in the Global Business Roundtable Network by accessing the GBR website, www.globalbusinessroundtable.com. The GBR and GFFJ leadership requests all GBR members and GFFJ ambassadors to set aside every Wednesday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. from January to November as a day of prayer and fasting. You are also invited to join the GBR 24-hour prayer network. For more information on how to join and be allocated a slot, kindly contact Pastor Carole Paulson at carole@globalbusinessroundtable.com or Ms. Siska Adamson on siska@globalbusinessroundtable.com. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone that has participated on the program today. I would like to thank Mr. Edward Nyambawalo from Zim for doing the opening prayer. And we would like to give gratitude and appreciation to our speakers today. Our main presentation today was from our very own Madam Carole Wanjau from Kenya. And then the remarks from Mr. Matt Parfitt from the UK, as well as Ms. Diana Njuguna from South Africa. And also we'd like to thank Mr. Christian Grondot for doing the offering. And also would like to thank in advance Madam Linda Ginasono for closing in the word of prayer. And also lastly, I would like to thank Dr. Gandao for taking us through the program today, to assist the chairman, Prof. Sipho Mseleku, and we thank you for the great job you did. And also like to thank every person, each and every one of you that has managed to put away time to attend the session today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Tato Mashao, for the announcement and vote of thanks. And we want to thank you for thanking all of us. We thank you so much. I want to ask Your Excellency Linda Ganasosu from Côte d'Ivoire to close with a prayer.
Merci, Excellence. Merci encore ce soir pour ce temps de rencontre qui a été rendu possible. Alors, nous allons prier. Seigneur, nous voulons te bénir encore ce soir pour ce temps que nous avons partagé. Tu as dit dans ta parole que ton peuple est péri parce qu'il manque de connaissances, il est ignorant. Merci pour ces trois panélistes et merci pour tout ce que nous avons partagé. Nous bénissons ton nom parce que nous savons encore que nous avons été instruits sur ta parole et à partir de ta parole. Seigneur, merci de nous donner de mettre en pratique ces partages dans nos familles, dans nos maisons, dans nos activités, au plan financier. Que ton nom soit béni parce que la parole déclare que l'or et l'argent t'appartiennent. Nous bénissons ton nom encore ce soir pour cette session. Seigneur, merci pour le bien qu'elle nous a apporté. Et nous prions encore que tu donnes la force et le courage à tes serviteurs, à tes enfants de chercher et de partager leurs connaissances à l'ensemble des membres du GBR. Nous bénissons chacun, nous proclamons que la grâce de Dieu repose sur chaque famille et que la bénédiction accompagne chacun. Merci Seigneur d'impacter les entreprises, les activités, les familles et de guérir les malades, de guérir les maladies, même au plan financier, Seigneur mon Dieu, les blessures familiales et tout ça, et que ton nom soit béni, Père. Merci encore pour cette session, merci pour le convenant, merci pour pour le dirigeant, pour tous les participants, et que ton nom seul soit béni au nom de Jésus. Amen.
Amen and amen. Thank you very much, Your Excellency Linda, for that prayer. Thank you so much, technical team, for the work that you have done. And thank you, everybody. Have a blessed night. Thank you. We meet next week on Thursday, same time. God bless you. Good evening.